Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Like no matter what you do, you're just a burden? My son called me that. He said I was weighing him down, costing him more than I was worth. Most would expect anger or tears. But my story didn't end there. Because sometimes the loudest justice comes in the quietest form. I did something he never saw coming. Something that broke the silence between us forever. If you've ever been pushed aside by someone you love, stay with me. This is not just a story of pain. It's a story of quiet strength and unexpected power. I moved in after my hip gave out. Brent said he had the space, said it would be easier than hiring someone. "Just until you're steady again, Mom," he said. That was the word. Easier. Not warmer, not closer, just easier. I packed a single suitcase, folded my quilt, tucked in the tin of lemon balm tea I used to brew when he was sick. The guest room smelled like dust and carpet cleaner. I opened a window. The breeze carried silence. The pill tray arrived on day 3. Beige plastic, with the days of the week in blue. No scent, no memory. He placed it next to my water and said, "This will help keep things organized." It didn't belong to me. It didn't belong to anyone. It belonged to a system. Then came the list. Printed, laminated, taped on the fridge. No laundry after 7 p.m. No food in bedroom. Notify before leaving house. Notify. Like I was a tenant or a pet. There was also a chart. Rows for meds, movement, waste. At the top, in all caps, Resident, Lucinda Grace. My name looked sterile. I used to write it on report cards, on birthday checks, on notes tucked into lunchboxes. Now it was a label on a chart. It was the spreadsheet that cut deepest. One morning, I added tissues and butter cookies to the grocery list. That evening, Brent brought out his laptop. "I've made a shared cost sheet," he said, "so we can track your items. Don't worry, some of these are reimbursable through your pension." I stared at the screen. He had given my tea a value. My toothpaste, my paper towels. Next to my name, he had written, "Retired, limited assets, low-risk liability." He didn't yell. He didn't shame. He calculated. Once, I reached for the tin of lemon balm. My fingers brushed the lid. He rushed in. "Mom, please, let me get that. You don't need to risk a strain." He handed it to me like it was fragile, then wiped the shelf with a disinfectant cloth. I watched the cloth, then my hands. That night, he helped me sit at the table. After I settled, he wiped the chair where I'd touched. He smiled as he did it, and I understood. I wasn't being cared for. I was being managed. I passed the hallway mirror later that week. I was in it, but I wasn't there. My back was smaller. My shoulders pulled in. My eyes looked like they were waiting for permission. I used to be his mother. The woman who stayed up to sew his Halloween costume the night before the parade. The one who baked cookies at midnight after his law school heartbreak. Now, I was a balance sheet, a footprint, a liability, and that was the betrayal. Not the silence, but the redefinition. Mornings used to bring sunlight through lace curtains, the gentle sound of birds and the kettle's whistle, warmth filling the kitchen like a hug. Now, mornings bring motion sensors, soft clicks echoing in the hallway every time I pass. One day, I heard the sharp beep and froze. My breath caught. It was louder than any slammed door. I started to walk slower, softer, hoping to shrink enough to avoid detection. The house has 2 thermostats, upstairs and downstairs. Mine was taped over. A note stuck beside it read, "Please do not adjust. Energy use monitored monthly." Once, I ran this house. Cooked for 6. Kept a garden and a freezer stocked full. Now, I borrowed heat like borrowed time, unsure if I had permission to feel warm. Afternoons found me sitting on the guest bed's edge, hands folded neatly, eyes fixed on the dusty windowsill. I didn't open the curtains anymore. The sunlight made the dust dance, too visible. If I disturbed the dust, I'd have to explain why I moved so much. I missed the clatter of life, the clinking pots, the slammed cabinet, the laughter from the stairs. But that laughter wasn't mine to hear. When friends came, they kept the door closed. One day, I overheard someone ask, "Whose room is that?" Brent said, "Just storage for now." I didn't ask more. I knew. Once, I baked cornbread muffins, the same ones Brent loved after school. I left them on the counter with a note, "Still warm, eat while soft." Hours later, the tray was gone. The note tossed in the trash. Not a crumb touched. No one mentioned it. In the laundry room, I spotted a shirt I'd sewn for Brent when he went to college. A small heart stitched on the sleeve. It hung on a rack labeled "Donate." I ran my fingers over the fabric. The scent of lemon detergent lingered. I whispered, "You used to call that love." That night, a ticking clock filled the silence. I moved quietly to the kitchen for water. In the microwave's reflection, I saw myself. Small, still. A woman holding a glass like it might shatter. I tried to speak once, to ask for help, but my voice was swallowed by the walls. I passed a hallway mirror. I saw myself, but I wasn't there. My shoulders pulled in, my eyes waiting for permission. I used to be his mother, the woman who stayed up sewing Halloween costumes at midnight, baking cookies when law school broke his heart. Now, I was a shadow, an echo that answered when no one called. It began, not with pain, but with packaging. A small beige pill tray, 3 compartments, neatly labeled, slid across the table like a cafeteria receipt. Brent placed it in front of me with a nod. No water, no smile. "This is your essentials, Mom." That word stuck. Essentials. As if the rest of me, my mind, my stories, my Sunday lemon cakes, were optional. I watched the tray. Plastic, thin, the kind I'd once seen at the nursing home when visiting his father. There was still a faded barcode sticker under it. I didn't say anything, just placed the pills in my mouth. No water, just the quiet shame of swallowing. The next morning, I noticed the chart, taped beside the fridge, laminated, bright-colored rows. Meds, movement, waste. My name at the top. Not Mom, not Lucinda, just resident. Brent passed by, coffee in hand, not looking at me. I stared at the chart again. My body had become a schedule, my presence, a system, and still, I said nothing. That evening, as I folded laundry, I paused on a towel. It had faint initials on it. BG. Brent's towel from high school football. I had stitched those letters myself after he won his first game. My fingers ran over the faded thread, and I thought, when did I become the one labeled? 2 days later, I walked by his office and heard the call. "No, she can't manage on her own. Not anymore. She's a lot." He didn't whisper. He didn't close the door. He didn't even flinch when I stood still in the hallway. That phrase, "a lot," sank into me. Groceries are a lot. Traffic is a lot. I was a lot. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the dining room table and stared at the family photo still hanging crooked by the stairs. In the picture, I was smiling, arms around Brent, holding his son. That child had called me Lulu, his first word. I looked at myself in that photo. I looked smaller now. The form came next. A printed packet, clipped neatly. He slid it over like a menu. "Just a standard form," he said. "Transfer of care responsibility, in case something happens." I looked down. Boxes, signatures, witness lines. My hand trembled. He polished his shoes that morning. He always did that before court. Shiny enough to reflect. But I don't think he looked down anymore. The form felt heavier than it should have. I ran my finger along the edge. Paper can cut, even when it smiles. Then came the tea. I reached for my favorite tin on the top shelf. My lemon balm blend. The one I used to brew when Brent had a cold as a boy. My fingertips touched the edge when his voice snapped from behind. "You shouldn't strain. That's how accidents happen." I froze, not because I lost balance, but because I'd heard that tone before. It was the one I used when he was 7, reaching for the stove. Now, I was the child, the fragile, the risk. I backed away from the shelf. The tin dropped, rolled. The lid popped open, and the scent of dried lemon leaf filled the air. I didn't cry. I just stared at it. That night, I opened the drawer, the one I kept beneath my bed. It creaked softly, like it was tired too. Inside were papers, old letters, receipts, and a hospital invoice from years ago. Brent had lost his job then. They were drowning in debt. I had sold my engagement ring to help them. He never knew. Love doesn't ask for receipts. But tonight, I was looking. I placed the invoice beside a blank page, wrote my name, Lucinda Grace, and I began to write my will. I didn't own much. The house wasn't mine. The car had long stopped running. But I owned a truth. I left the jewelry to my niece, the books to the local library, and the final hospital bills of Brent's father, still unpaid. I assigned to Brent, not to hurt, to remember. Then I reached for the brown envelope, the one I'd saved from my husband's days at the post office. The corners were softened. The glue barely held. I folded the document slowly. My fingers moved like memory, precise, tender. I pressed the flap down and smoothed it with my palm. On the front, I wrote, "For the one who said I weighed too much." No anger, just truth. The burden wasn't my body. It was what I carried without asking. And now, I was handing it back. Gently, legally, quietly. When I slipped the envelope into the drawer, I didn't feel powerful. I felt steady, like the earth beneath bare feet, like lemon tea at dusk. I didn't breathe deeply. I didn't smile, but I felt something open, a room inside me I'd locked long ago. And for the first time in months, I slept without folding myself small. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest voice that speaks the loudest truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam doors. Instead, I wrote. A letter, a will, not full of anger, but heavy with truth. I left my jewelry to my niece, the books to the local library. The house? I left it to those who need shelter. But the bills, the final hospital invoices from my late husband's care, I assigned to Brent. It wasn't a punishment. It was a call to see what's been carried all along. I held the old brown envelope in my hands, its edges softened by years of handling, the glue barely clinging. I traced the faded creases with my fingers, careful as if touching a fragile memory. On the front, I wrote, "For the one who said I weighed too much." No curse, no spite, just a truth written in ink. I imagined Brent opening it one day. No fanfare, no shouting, just a quiet realization settling like dust on a shelf. I hoped he'd see that the weight I carried wasn't mine alone. Some burdens are passed down, whether we want them or not. Sometimes justice whispers, and I left him a burden to carry, but not the kind that breaks a family, the kind that makes them see. After sealing the envelope, I felt a gentle peace, not victory, not revenge, a soft settling, like the sunlight filtering through lace curtains, like the calm after a storm. I looked out the window, letting the light wash over me, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled quietly. The sun was setting, painting the kitchen in soft gold and rose. I held a warm cup of lemon balm tea, feeling the steam curl gently around my fingers. Her small hand slipped into mine, my granddaughter's. No words passed between us, just the quiet language of touch. In that moment, her warmth spoke louder than any voice. I felt the softness of her skin, the gentle pressure as she squeezed my hand. It was a promise, a whispered hope that even the heaviest burdens can be eased. The house no longer felt cold or empty. It held a new breath, a gentle pulse. The worn brown envelope rested on the table nearby, its edges softened by time. I traced the creases with a fingertip, feeling the weight of every word sealed inside. I thought of Brent and the burden I had placed in his hands, not as a punishment, but as a quiet reminder, an invitation to see. The tea warmed my chest as the last light slipped behind the hills. Healing isn't loud or sudden. It's soft, slow, like a door opening just a crack. I looked out the window, watching the sky deepen. In her hand, I felt a gentle strength, and in that fading light, I saw a door, slightly open, waiting. For the first time in a long while, I smiled softly. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had found peace. Have you ever carried a weight no one else could see? A burden silent but heavy, woven into every breath and step. If you've ever felt invisible or counted as less, remember this: your worth is not measured by others' eyes. It's held in the love you quietly give and the strength you barely show. What burden are you carrying today that deserves to be seen? Thank you for holding my story close. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it too. The email is just below, sweetheart. Until next time, take care of your heart, softly, fiercely, and with grace.